Welcome to the Boneyard. This is a podcast about Mythgard. This is episode 9, The Evil Red. And you can blame Marktheus for that awful Evil Dead pun. It's all good, though. My name is Flake. I will be your host and joined, as always, by my co-host, the spooky Marktheus.
There's no shortage of puns, Flake, just remember that. But we are happy to bring you another episode of The Boneyard. We're getting close to episode 10, which is pretty exciting. And we want to start the show by thanking our sponsors, Team Rankstar, Inked Gaming, 98.3 Media, OP Seat, and all you wonderful listeners. Thank you so much for making the podcast what it is.
Yeah, and Mythgard has undergone a slight balance tweak, with the main nerf target having been Orpheum of Horrors. And I know, it's just everybody, let's pour one out for our Orpheum boys. But with the patch, we also get a slew of new faction missions to complete, and as we also bask in the aftermath of the Moonlight Masquerade.
And what an event it was, and to help us make sense of the nerf, as well as discussing the new faction missions and the dex list from the Moonlight Masquerade, is streamer and card slinger WaifuGate.
Yeah, that's right. And now this deal is getting worse all the time, so best pray we don't alter it any further. Let's play the music and enter the Boneyard. All right, we're going to start again with the state of Mythgard now. No meta snapshots from our friends at mythgardhub.com yet, but we do have a tournament that just wrapped up this past week. It was the Moonlight Masquerade, so there's no shortage of
Were you there?
information. I happened to be there. Yes, I was taking part. Well, I was taking part from a spectator perspective on the first day, the Saturday, the Swiss tournament. Mm-hmm. However, I also got the privilege of casting 4 matches. Was it 4 matches or 3 matches? It was the top
4. No, it was 4.
Semi.
4. It was 4. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great though. It was fantastic, and I'm very, very happy with the turnout, with the amount of people that actually took in the tournament when it was broadcast, and big thanks again to 98.3 Media for that. But that tournament was a pretty good barometer of what decks people are confident in, as well as what performed well. So we are going to be breaking down those decks pretty shortly, but first I want to bring in our guest for this episode. That would be WaifuGate. WaifuGate, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And now you are a streamer. You have a lot of CCG experience. You're an excellent card player all around. But I want to know, what is the whole resume of your background in CCGs?
In CCGs, so I started out as a kid collecting Pokemon cards, which evolved into Yu-Gi-Oh!, which evolved into Magic. And I've delved here and there in different card games, like Shadowverse, for example. I actually started streaming with Shadowverse under the name of Swiss Mocha, but that's going to be part of your other video thing that you're working on, I think. So,
yes, there's kind of another sort of side project going on called What's in a Name, but we can talk about that another time. But
right.
we'll get to break that as Swiss Mocha. I mean, I've had a standard Mocha.
Right. But yeah, like pretty much my focus is on Magic and now Mythgard. Like I've been streaming Magic, and then after streaming Magic for 6, 7, or 8 hours, I'll stream Mythgard for like 1 to 3. And it's been a really enjoyable experience so far. I've liked it a lot.
That's what I was going to get to, and it's interesting to note that there's always Yu-Gi-Oh! In the path to where you are today. Everyone who's come onto the show has usually either sprinkled in a little bit of Pokemon or a little bit of Yu-Gi-Oh! In terms of what their credentials are getting to where they are. And I want to know, now that you're obviously focused mostly on Magic, but there is, like you're saying, you're dedicating some of your time every time that you stream to Mythgard, and you are enjoying it. But I want to find out how you discovered Mythgard, mainly because there's not a huge marketing push coming from Rhino, and I came into it basically from word of mouth. I didn't see any ads for it. I just saw other people play it, and other people recommend it to me, specifically Mark. But I want to know how you discovered the game.
A friend, like a fellow streamer called The Gravecrawler, was actually streaming it, and that's when I first saw it. And then I noticed that you were streaming it as well shortly after that. So between you and him, I got introduced to it.
So he's the one to blame. We'll just blame him. But
wait, I've seen him on the ladder before. Is he another partner? I think he is, right? He's another Mythgard partner. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, one of the, I think in like the second wave of partners or third wave of partner introductions, he's in there, and he's a great dude. If you haven't, if you don't know Gravecrawler, he is someone also worth checking out.
Solid player.
Now, the appeal for you, because you are predominantly an MTG player, and I want to know where the appeal lies in MTG players in general, because I know that a lot of MTG players, such as myself, but also such as Jeff Hooglin, Noxious, etc., have and Mogwai have all been very favorable to this game. What do you think is the appeal of this game that MTG players are really, taking notice of Mythgard?
I'd say the obvious one's the resource system, just that all of your playables are also lands. I think that's the main point.
The land screw issue, I find, is something that has always been a boon of the game, and it's so well tied into the identity of Magic that it's something that you can't just fix. It's not like you can tweak that system to a degree. You can always print cards that can help you, dual lands, etc., all the time. But I think that with Magic, you'll always have that as a frustrating element to it. So being able to improve upon it is most likely why MTG players, I feel, you have the same design space as Magic does in terms of color combination, etc. But man, that land system can just really screw you hard and make you feel kind of bad. As awesome as Magic is, and I'm not going to stand here and pretend that I don't like the game. I love the game, but Mythgard does not have those same, feel bad moments.
Yeah, I agree.
So besides that, and what I do appreciate about you, Waifu, is that you have sent me, a dozen different lists over the course of, a month or two of you really discovering and diving into this game. And one thing I do enjoy is that your lists are always creative. They're always innovative and trying new things. And as somebody who prefers a creative approach versus an efficient net deck style, calculated dive into deck building, I love your lists. Your lists are great, and you're always giving me updates and whatnot, and I sincerely appreciate those. Now, I want to know what your latest concoction is. What are you, tinkering with? What's your current baby?
The current baby right now is a purple-green list. It's based off of what Honoric's been working on. What's funny about me and Honoric, he's another fellow streamer, is that we'll end up coming to the same conclusions once in a while. Like just efficiencies or cards that we like. So the list that I'm running right now, I can just I can link it to you in Discord, but it's basically just a green purple list that uses Sword Saints as life gain for purple, and then it uses Born Again and Disc to get a value engine going, and then it just ramps a bit, and it's got like really powerful cards like Stag and Treacherous Murmur and Bald Mountain, and it just kind of recurs that a bit while using like Racer to fight off aggro, Steam Bun, stuff like that. There's a spicy Defy Death in there, and I love Spirit Away with Bald Mountain. That's probably my favorite combination of cards. Just being
That's
able to
a nasty card. That is such a nasty card. The transformative effect is so, I don't want to say overrated because I think people value it, but in terms of removal, transforming a creature versus just destroying it, obviously banishing something is probably your best bet, but transforming it is likely the next best thing there, and sweeping something away, turning into a vacuum cleaner or whatever the hell it becomes is just damn good.
Yeah. And you don't just remove the creature either. You stuff one of your opponent's draws because they have to draw that later as an 0/3, and it's just terrible for them. So I like that a lot.
Oh yeah, bricks.
Yep.
Yeah, when you're stuffing garbage into their potential draws, there's going to be a feel bad moment when they're just, they're looking for something off the top and then they get that garbage draw.
Yeah.
Now you play Disc with this list, but you're playing it not from a perspective of reanimation. You're playing it from a perspective of just value trading with the Slayer ability, right?
Yes, value trading, and then you can just chuck Born Again. You can chuck like spears, like just things that you have extra copies of, like a Racer if you're not really looking to trade it or something. Like you just pitch whatever your worst card is, and then you get, usually it's Born Again though, and then you get 2 Divination the next turn if you need to. And then you have that Slayer, so you can trade with Racer as a 3, so it's almost like having Infuse. Even though you don't have Infuse as your power, you have Smite, so it's just easy to trigger. So there's a lot of depth to it. I was watching Honor stream that and just ended up switching it to myself. I just liked it a lot.
That's such a great path that I think is underutilized because so many people use it with Reanimator and that's it. And then like when you think about the Slayer effect and then getting extra card draw, like man, that's actually a really great path to use another way. I remember Charmer said something about using it in mono orange, and he used it
Ooh, nice.
like to discard the tokens. Like he would just use tokens to discard, so he wasn't actually getting rid of anything big like that. That's such a good idea.
Yep. Like
Yeah, well,
I think Honoric based it off of one of the top 8 lists. I forget which one he said he based it off of, but they were doing a similar thing with Born Again, I believe, with the disc control for just a regular control list and not specifically a Reanimator.
The wholesome. So this is a good opportunity now to just slide into the fact that while there's no established meta necessarily, I mean, there's decks that are popular on
kind of.
Well, there's decks that are popular on any particular day.
I think it depends on what your rank is, because like the meta is so different in gold than it was when I was in silver, and it's really different apparently in bronze, as everyone's just playing aggro in bronze. So it's like super different.
If we want to kind of dip our toe into what is commonly popular or what people trust in terms of when the games matter, in terms of like high level play on Mythic or in Champions tier, the evaluation, a good way to just sort of discern what is quote unquote meta, it's the tournament that we most recently had where stuff was on the line, there were prizes ready to go. The top 8 were very, very diverse. And I think that this is worth diving into because there was a significant slew of different decks. And I'm just going to go through
only one Reanimator.
Well, that's
only one.
So in terms of and purely discussing the top 8, we had a green purple Reanimator. We had a orange yellow, a blue red. We had a red orange, a yellow green, a green orange, and another red orange. So lots of there was a couple two red oranges. I think was essentially that's the mode of 2 is green orange, which is red orange.
Yeah.
So there was a nice diversity to it. And at the end of the day, we had no mirror matches going through the tournament. It was all different decks, different archetypes going up against each other. Do you think that the fact that there's no decks that are, identifying themselves as meta favorites, is that I feel that that's a very, very good thing, that any deck could really win any tournament, which in turn puts the onus on the player and the piloting skills. Is that the ultimate goal of a card game, is to put the best players in the best positions, and decks are not necessarily as important to discover, determining the victor of any particular tournament?
Yeah, for sure. What's interesting when you say that, the right before Masquerade, the day before Masquerade, there was the nerf to Orpheum happened, and right before that, a lot of people had submitted red purple as their deck. Like that was the meta. Like that was kind of the meta that was forming anyway, right? The red purple aggro. And right before, on that Friday when they released the patch, a bunch of people resubmitted their decks because they changed from red purple just because of the one card. But that's why all of a sudden, like I think that nerf made it more diverse. I think you would have seen a lot more red purple in that tournament had it not been for the Orpheum nerf the day before, which is really, I wonder how much different it would have been.
Yeah, I think it's good that the developers are stepping in like that too, to balance cards that are super like just super broken or super like it just feels oppressive. Like if you're gonna queue up on the ladder and you're like, oh, I'm probably gonna play against this one aggro deck again.
Yeah, that's always good because you never want like one card that's, if there's one card that's, oh, this is in every deck, then it's like, well, maybe we should look at that card and find out why every single person has to play this card, and maybe change that up.
Yeah, because go ahead.
Oh no, continue, please.
Well, I was about to say like it's fine if a card's like powerful in a way, but if people are just running that one card and it can only be ran and it's like the most efficient thing ever, it's just a really, really feels bad situation. And it's fine to just look at the card and then be like, well, how can we rebalance this so that it's balanced? Maybe people will still run it in these types of aggro lists, but it won't just feel as bad playing against it. Like maybe increase the mana cost or do something else. But
yeah, I still see it too. I still see Orpheum. I still see that red purple deck. Like I don't think it changed the whole lot. I understand why people got mad about the taking away the +1 effect, but I still see it. It's still pretty effective for board clear and all that.
Well, I think that there was a little bit of a, I don't want to call it, I do want to call it an overreaction. There was a matter of actually, it was the Discord equivalent of flipping cars over and lighting stuff on fire. It was a little bit much of an.
If you looked at the argument, though, I kind of get it, because the argument was that was the one deck that was budget friendly and was able to deal with a lot of other different types of decks. But the thing is, though, like my argument was, I don't think that the taking away the +1 on Orpheum was really going to make a huge difference for you, because the reason why you were playing Orpheum to begin with was to have a board clear. And that was the way to help deal with when you're aggro, to help clear the board for you. So that effect is still there. So that's why I was like, I mean, you still have the board clear, so why are we this upset about it? But I understand the whole aggro or the whole budget part of it.
Right, and it's true. And again, it's just the one extra damage that you're losing. So over the course of, it might take one extra turn for you to actually go ahead and punch through. But perhaps that was part of the calculated effectiveness of the deck, is the fact that usually by turn 5 you should have your opponent in range for a lethal, and one extra turn, it might make the difference. I was just talking about it with Laser on the tournament broadcast, is that aggressive decks versus control or late game decks, the 6th turn is usually where things start to change and things start to sort of sway in the other option, where if you can weather that storm for the first few turns, then you're fine.
That's what I said about turn 7 a while back, when I said, if you're playing aggro, if you're past turn 7, then forget it, because you're going to have to play control now.
Right. Yeah. In regards to like budget and stuff too, there's one list, I think it was Koravas. I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Kavaris. Yes, or Kavaris.
But like you look at that list and it's pretty budget too. Like aside from Braggy and Magnus, it's like just a rare or two, and you probably don't need the Oak to win. It's nice,
I know that list. Yeah.
So
you don't really need Oak. Oak is nice, but you don't 100% need that card. Yeah.
And like you can run Thunderclap instead of Magnus. It's not as good, but I mean, like if you just need the clear, I think Magnus is pretty good in that list, just because it's a body plus it's a tempo play.
Sure.
But something like that could be really good for budget too. So there's still other options. Like even if the go-to option isn't there anymore, there's still stuff out there for you, sure, which is nice.
Yeah, Flake just helped Synergy God, right? You just helped him with a new he's like new to the game, brand new, and you just helped him make a nice aggro like budget deck, and he's doing great with it.
Yeah, he was as green can get in terms of getting into the game, and he was maybe probably just a couple hours into his progression. And basically what I did was I told him, I said, do you just want to be winning games right now, right? Like you want to just be able to sort of crank out as many games as possible to complete quests and whatnot. And I suggested that red blue is the best way to go. And basically what we did was we went through his red and blue collection and put the obvious choices in there, and then we used the rest of his wild cards and his essence and then filled the gaps. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we went 5-0 by the time I sort of pieced out of his stream, or out of his, I was kind of coaching him through the early games. But eventually then he came back and says, I think I went like 10-2 after you left with this deck.
Nice.
And the whole aggressive state usually is leans towards a more budget friendly. And I think that the fact that Orpheum put it over the top was, people were maybe a little bit upset, because again, it all comes down to people's collections and their economy, and the fact that there was a tier 1 deck out there that had a very low price tag that people can really jump on early and have some success with.
Yeah, that's why it's a tier 1 deck that was forming. That was the meta that was forming, and that's why it was like quickly shut down, and that's why it was like, oh, you shut down the meta already. I think it's how people felt. So
part of it, I think, also the popularity of that deck was the fact that it flew right under the other popular deck, which is yellow-green Volition combo decks. And even though yellow-green Volition combo won the tournament, there was only one instance of it in the entire top 8. Yellow-green Volition was only there once. I
think it was there though in the Swiss. I'm pretty sure it was there a couple times in Swiss, but it was the only one made the top 8.
I actually have the statistics for this in terms of what showed up, and I
Nice.
want to give big props to Corey Millhouse, who actually took almost like a census of the decks, and not only the decks in terms of what their appearance are, but classifying them and their conversion rate. So, just as a quick explanation of what conversion rate means, basically the top 8. In order to be in the top 8 before tiebreakers, you needed to have a 4-2 record in the 6-round Swifts. So what he did was he told us how many percentage of each deck had a 4-2 record, so had an opportunity to make it. So, but in terms of green yellow like Volition combo, only 5% of the 42 players played Volition combo. 5%. Now, all 5%, I guess, being the made it to the conversion rate was they all went 4-2 or better. Not all were in the top 8, but only 5% brought Volition combo. So those who were losing their minds about Volition being a giant boon on everything, when push comes to shove and there was actual prizes on the line, 5% of people brought it to the tournament. So is it still a problem in your eyes? Is Volition something that needs to get addressed like a lot of people think it should?
I mean, the deck is quite like slow, like in the way that it works, and there are different ways to do it too. Like there's like the green orange variant where they don't use Volition, but they use like resupply Caravan to accomplish about the same thing.
Right. And
the
Caravan
problem with
control
that
decks were represented 10% of. So there was about 4 or 5 people who brought a Caravan related green. It was orange green Caravan control, and we ended up seeing that in the finals, in the top 8.
Look at the Rainbow Rush. Wait, I'm looking at the wrong column. I'm looking at wait. There's 2 different columns.
So the first column.
The first column is how many people brought that. Is that what it is?
Correct. So the is how many actually brought it, and I'm seeing if I can actually get this image.
Oh, and the second column is how many people won with it.
No, the conversion rate is whoever had a record that related to being top 8.
Okay, I got you. Yeah.
So you needed to go 4-2 to pass the conversion rate. Again, thanks to Corey Millhouse for these statistics. But Rainbow Rush being blue, red, it was just basically, which rush are you playing? Like a 3-color rush. 14 people were playing some type of rush-related variant versus 15% that brought control, some type of miscellaneous control. But the 2% that brought Reanimator, I guess that was just one person.
That was wholesome. Who made the top 8?
Yeah,
who made the top 8, which was great. So there's that whole thing. But all in all, there was no specific one type of archetype. So Caravan control, orange green, 10%. Fires of Creation, any type of artifact related deck was 12%. Rush, any type of rush variant was 14%, but that was it in terms of specific decks that brought it. So there was a nice spread of decks. And
I didn't think anyone brought Fires of Creation, actually. So I'm a little surprised, but I didn't think
nobody who made it in. Conversion rate 0%. It was a losing.
Yeah, that makes me sad, man. I love Fires of Creation. That makes me very sad.
Yeah,
Fires of Creation.
It's so underrated.
Yeah.
Well, with a conversion rate of 0%, people might need to still sort of figure out the right frequency for it.
Someone in your stream today said, and I think this is why people feel that way about Fires, because somebody in your stream today said, "Oh, that deck's too I don't have a high enough IQ for that." And I was like, "Well, it's just you just have to play slow and think about it." And it's like it's just Fires is such a slow deck, and there's so many things you have to build, and it just gets worse as the game goes, for your opponent. But it's such a slow start. I think that just turns people off. I guess I don't know.
So in terms of an actual meta, the decks obviously are well spread out. I think that the statistics that we need to pay attention to is the fact that in this tournament, 48% chose Turn of Seasons as their path, and 62% chose Impel as their power.
I love that he did all this. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, I know. Again, Corey Millhouse really coming in clutch here. So thanks again to Corey Millhouse. Is that something that needs to get looked at? Is Impel the obvious choice? I don't know how you would possibly nerf it or if it even needs a nerf. Is Impel just far and beyond better than the other options in terms of powers if it had a 62% selection rate from decks in the tournament?
Maybe everyone had a lot of faction or had a lot of quests for Impel. I don't know.
Well, I don't know if you're gonna play if you like if you're entering a tournament to complete quests. You've got give my regards to your balls because
they still work. So.
Yeah. But like half of the entrants, I guess you got about probably 20 people of the 42 chose Turn of Seasons as their selection, and 62% chose Impel. What makes Impel so attractive? Impelling, yes, I guess, to as a selection. Waifu, is that your power of choice when you're building a deck? I mean, to me, it seems like the obvious choice whenever I'm playing anything but Rush.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance that I usually pick Impel, just because being able to move and then attack is just so strong and it's so good for positioning. Even being able to Impel and then move again to stuff like an attack is also useful. But like there are opportunities like to play other powers, such as like in the Reanimator list, you play Smite or something you can do that doesn't require you to have a creature, like Mend, for example. I think instead of just straight up nerfing Impel, though, we could look at like rebalancing the other powers to make them a little bit stronger. Like Mend, for example, maybe healing for 2 instead of 1 wouldn't be broken. Like I think that would be fine. But then like how do we make the other thing? Like I think Infuse is already fine because you'll use Infuse in like an orange deck to trade up on recruits, so you can attack for 3, or on the like, you know, tokens, the 1/1s you can attack for 2 and trade. And that's fine. But there's like every time I do that, I miss Impel. Like I'm just like, man, I wish I could just move my dude over and smack that guy.
I wonder what the least used one is.
Yeah, the regret of not choosing Impel is always, you know, that is always the feel bad moment when you just want away and you just want to slide over and get a fair trade on something where otherwise, you know, nothing would help you. I like what you're saying about the Mend. I think Mend might get a lot more play if it played a lot like Smite, in the same regards that if your opponent, where Smite has the added bonus of if your opponent has more health than you, it'll do 2 damage. I feel like with Mend, if Mend had the added bonus of healing your face for 2 if you're behind and you're as well as
I like that.
I think
then people will yell it's too OP, so I don't know.
That's the point. Isn't that weird that like that one extra point, it makes it go from underpowered to way overpowered? And I tend to agree because I think healing face for 2 when you're way behind
think about all the things you would put out of range by healing by 2, right? So you'd be putting Ignition out of range. You'd be pushing a lot of rush cards out of range. You know, if you heal, like if you're trying to just stay alive and heal by 2 instead of 1, you would just be like, I don't know.
Well,
that's
like
a lot.
Maybe we
man.
could. Yeah, maybe it could heal face for 2, but only the minions always for 1.
Oh no, that's like that. Yeah. I would never make it a healed minions for 2. I think that would be.
Oh, that would be nuts. You'd have defenders that just never leave the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd need hard removal just to get rid of these gigantic bodies on the board. Mend, I think Mend is fine. I just don't think it's in the current proper meta. I'm seeing it a lot more recently as the frequency of decks, as sort of rush decks and aggressive decks kind of fall out of massive favor. I think Mend was way too slow in the rush meta. I think now that things are kind of slowing down to a more mid-rangey to control side of the spectrum, Mend is a little bit better. I've been queuing into Mend a lot more.
I like Mend. Mend is my favorite ability to use.
Yeah, it's my favorite overall.
That was the first one that I ever did. I thought that Mend was, to me, I was always thinking, I'm like, first of all, why the hell would you ever choose Impel? It seems stupid. And then I thought that Infuse was never the right answer. And then eventually I was like, I always thought that Mend was by far the best. And I'd laugh when someone would queue into me with like,
with Impel.
Impel. I'm like, whatever, run away from me. I don't care. Yeah. Like I'll always have people on the board to match you, you know? And then obviously that was wrong. But
Impel is great with like anybody that has Swift or Teleport. You know, because you could just fly them around, which is really
the Shinobi of Wind. Oh my god, I love
one.
throwing those into purple control decks.
Yeah.
Like you can just trade minions. It feels so good.
It's great.
Oh, it's great. It is great.
What do you think the least used one is? I was gonna say the least used is probably either the Divination
Smite.
one.
It's got to be Smite.
No.
I feel
Smite,
like
Smite I see all the time. It's got to be the one that creates. What's the one that creates?
Oh, Reconstruct.
Yeah, that's got to be it, right? I hardly see that one ever.
Yeah.
I've seen it a little bit more lately because of the fact that people want to put things on the board and then get value off of them. I actually saw a Reconstruct deck that used a lot of it was basically a blue enchantment deck that used Reconstruct to just drop little
stairways
dudes
and stuff.
Oh yeah. So that 1/1 was a 4/4, that 1/1, and then when you finally clean up the board, you're staring down an earth slide or something, but they use the spider's web and just reconstruct on it every turn. So you had to go through a deadly minion every time. And I was like, God damn, that's a good idea. That's a great complementary. Well, there you go. Like it's yeah. Because if you're not playing out of your graveyard, who the hell cares about what you're banishing out? Right?
Yeah, it's just another resource. Why not?
Yeah.
Because then your opponent spends all of those turns answering the 4/4 or the deadly minions, this and that. And then like they play their board wipe, they do something else just to answer tokens, and then you slap down like Hyperborean or whatever it is on one of your enchantments. And now what are you going to do against that? You spent all of your answers.
The only thing is it costs 3 though. It costs 3 mana. That's the only downside in my opinion.
Yeah. But I feel like to me, Reconstruct is a later game option anyways, because you need something out of your graveyard to banish in order to create one. And you're using that 3 mana on setting up. Reconstruct is great late game because you're always desperate to have some type of board development. So you might be creating a snake here or there, but if you're playing predominantly blue and enchantments, I mean, throwing you have a couple singing stones up, you throw down a Reconstruct onto like Waifu said, like a stairway or even like a splicing lab or something, where you have
demolition speedway, whatever you want, like it's all good.
Oh, splicing lab is actually a good one to throw down there too.
Well, it's good for people who don't have the RNG, gods crapping all over their head like I do. I think if we're going to talk about splicing lab, and this might be a good tangent, it's that if we're counting the ways it could screw you, it could give you fragile, it could give you like -1/-1, it could give you immobile, and it can give you ephemeral. I think that those are the only ways it can screw you versus the dozen ways that it can help you. So it'll always it's always well in your favor to help you out. Unless you're me. I think I remember because I would always just like slide. Speaking of Impel, I used to have a deck where my Snakes on the Lane deck would have splicing labs next to snake dens. So I would just create a snake, slide it over to the splicing lab, and then just build up these
so you built a laboratory. Cool.
Precisely. Perfect for Halloween.
Yeah.
I was working in the lab. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I cannot count the amount of times I'd be like, all right, snake goes to the right and it's dead.
That's probably the worst target you could put in there because of the -1 potential,
Or you just slam it on there and it's like, okay, now it's immobile, thank you, and then next turn, oh, it's dead. Perfect.
No.
Or you get immobile then swift just to laugh at you and say, oh god. But that's great. Like Reconstruct as the least used one, and here we are discussing these really interesting ways to use it.
Back in Alpha, back when Fires of Creation, early Fires of Creation Alpha was you used to play all the colors. That's how that deck was ran. So you would play all the colors because you're playing every single artifact basically, and people would run that power. That would be the power that was with it. That was like the only time you would see it. And now you just don't see it ever. So it's kind of weird how Fires went from an all-in color deck to like people just you got to put Stretcher and that's it. It's just Stretcher.
Don't talk.
Nothing wrong with Stretcher. Nothing wrong with Stretcher. I'm just saying it's interesting how things evolve that way. But I think that's just because it's just interesting to see what people try to come up with to pair paths and powers together.
And I mean, no better way to discuss that, or how paths and powers sort of complement each other, is the fact that they fit into so many different decks in creative ways, as we discussed with Reconstruct. But the tournament meta that we looked at and seeing how diverse it was, I think, Mark, you mentioned that prior to the nerfing of Orpheum of Horrors, there was an onslaught of these red purple rush decks, right?
Yeah, that was actually the biggest concern that everybody had right before the patch came out, because they were concerned that they wouldn't have enough time between patch and when the due date was for turning in their decks, they wouldn't have enough time to come up with something else. And I kept assuring people, don't worry, the patch isn't going to mess with your deck that hard. It's okay. And luckily there was enough time for everyone to fix everything. But it was so many red purples in the first submission of decks that I can't believe how many people ended up changing their deck just because of that one thing. But I'm actually glad that they did, because we got such a different diverse, as we see from the statistics, we got such a different diverse meta in that tournament because of it. So it actually ended up being a blessing in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that the timing on that nerf was like couldn't have been better. Like looking at it, like I didn't pay attention to the tournament as it came out because I've been super busy with Magic and with Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup. There's a tournament going on right now that I'm taking part in. It's like a roguelike thing, but like I wasn't able to really pay attention, but I'm glad that the top 8 was so split. Like I love that they're just all kinds of different color combinations in the top 8. And after breaking down the statistics that you shared with us from Corey Millhouse, like I'm just glad that it's diverse, like for the first like kind of big tournament for it.
Yeah, that was a great showing, right? It was a good way to show how exciting tournament mode with this game can be. Although the only thing I will say is the finals were long. Like the second game in the finals was almost like over 20 minutes. It was super long.
But I kind of like that, because not necessarily that they're like extended long, like these 20 to 30 minute games. I mean, that could kind of get a little bit over the top. But the fact that Orpheum got the hit that it did, and again, I don't think it got nerfed into oblivion where it's a laughable card. I think that the spirit of the card itself, the actual, identity of the card exists and still is there. I think that the +1 is not what that card's about. The card is about dying on the Orpheum and creating the AoE effect. But so we're in agreement that it was a good thing to nerf it. And is even though, like I said, like people will bring all kinds of random, weird stuff into a tournament, like a low stakes tournament like this, I suppose was. I mean, there were stakes, but they were relatively low stakes. It's not like it was a $10,000 tournament where people were going to make sure that they had their best shot at it. But still, people brought in a bunch of decks. But it's not just a matter of the craziness and jank that people brought in. It's the fact that even that the wide array made it to the finals. So was this nerf the best possible thing to happen to the competitive scene and the ranked scene?
That some people will tell you yes, and there's a whole group that will tell you no. So it's right down the middle, really.
Yeah.
So is the next sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was about to say, like, now that I know that it's been nerfed and stuff, like I'm more apt to jump on ladder. Like before, with Mythgard, I was basically just like I'd switch over from Magic and just knock out my dailies versus like bots or something, because I didn't want to deal with the hyper aggro that I was used to, because even taking measures against the hyper aggro, I'd still lose a lot of the times, and it was a huge percentage of what I was playing against. So I was just discouraged to even play ladder because of it. So I'm glad that the change happened.
There's definitely an element here to keep in mind, and this is, I'm kind of going to direct this towards everyone that's upset about the nerf. You have to understand that it feels, even though you may be looking for the best deck, you're new to the game, you want the best deck, understandable. You want to climb with the best thing out there, whatever is the friendliest to make. That's great. That's going to happen no matter what game you join. But you have to understand that when you're trying to grind in a game and you're constantly playing against the same thing over and over and over and over, that's what gives a meta and other players super big fatigue. And I think that Rhino wanted to cut that fatigue out immediately, because the game is so new that it's too early to have meta fatigue when the meta just started. I mean, you want metas that are diverse, that have several different tier 1 decks, not just one powerful tier 1 deck and that's it. That's not a healthy meta. Healthy meta has at least 3 or 4 or 5 different tier 1 decks,
Right. Like if I can cut in, like right now with Magic, the reason why I split off to limited instead of constructed is because of the standard meta. Like if you look at the last championship, I think it was something like 70% Golo stacks, which is insane.
Yeah, like that's a big percentage. Oh my God.
It was, I think it was like 48% played Golos Field. And there was 80+% that were had green as their color of choice.
That's disgusting.
Yeah. And it's like right now, Oko is really popular with Simic Foods. So I've just been in my own little world with Limited, like learning that, and I've been having fun with that. I've been able to stream it without any stress at all. But like the thought about jumping back into Standard right now is just a little, like, it's daunting. It's almost depressing, you know. And it's like I'd rather just play Mythgard on my free time, and I'm glad that I don't have to deal with the same type of meta type thing, and I can still enjoy Magic through Limited. Like, I'm glad that I came to a nice like medium for both the games, you know?
Yeah, you don't want to queue into a game and then like 2 turns in, you're like, well, I know I'm going to lose now because of what they're playing. Like, that's the worst feeling ever. You know, like, especially for Mythgard, when the game, what we found out the average game was 9.5 minutes. Like, I don't want to sit here for 9.5 minutes where I ultimately know I'm going to lose at the end. Like, you got to have some sort of fighting chance, or, you know. And that's the issue. That's what you want to avoid.
Yeah, like I'll take a 45% lose chance against aggro if I'm playing control and I'm a little slow versus one control deck. But if I have to go against the same type of aggro that I have, you know, a 30% win rate against, it's just
exactly. Rough. And actually, I think now if we look at like kind of what we just talked about, the aggro in Mythgard actually spread out now. So it was all red purple for a while with the Orpheum. But now a lot of the aggro I've seen kind of spread into other colors. So they're mixing red and there's more red and orange going on. I've seen a couple red and blue. Like, it kind of spread out now as people are like, well, I guess I'm not gonna play Orpheum, and they've like found other ways to do it. So I think that's actually way better. You want different types of aggro, not just one defined aggro.
Yeah, and like for all the people complaining about the nerfs too, like it's like even if you spend some resources on a deck and it gets nerfed. Especially now with the faction quests like being introduced and stuff, like it's so nice to be able to like gather more resources and spend your time efficiently that way too. Like, it's in such a good spot right now. It's nice.
Definitely.
No, there's a bigger window now for new people. I think Rhino really hit it out of the park when it came to being a little bit more generous and appealing to a new player who has just discovered Mythgard, because the 99 mythics is always going to be a stain on an otherwise really, really shiny product. Unfortunately, it's going to be daunting when you look and you see that there's just so many mythics in order to collect. But again, you don't need 99 mythics to be successful. You just need maybe 2 or 3.
99 mythics, but your deck just needs 1.
Yeah. Exactly. That's if ever Jay-Z wanted to support the channel, he could go ahead and create that song for us, that parody version. But I mean, there's always going to be consequences to nerfing a card too hard. And obviously the consequence to the card itself never being played or seen again. We've seen that in all kinds of other games and whatnot, where a card is predominantly featured in the meta and then all of a sudden tweak to it and it just vanishes itself.
Wow, that's when they nerf it to hell, right? They didn't do that here, though. They didn't nerf the card to oblivion. It's still playable for sure. It's not like
I think
they took away all the power.
Right. Like, I think you can still make like a really interesting deck that uses like horrors, and then you use like blight or bite, I think is what it's called in green, to give all of your dudes like armor, and then to trade away your other minions, like, and just to do one-sided board wipes. Even like there's still a lot of intricate plays that you can do with the card, which is awesome.
I feel definitely. Like the card might actually be more of a mid-range to control card now. Before the aggressive aspect of it was that you just trade in your rush minions through the Orpheum, and if it was left untouched, you'd have the bonus of the +1. And I think maybe that is where a lot of the grief comes when it has to do with the nerf, is that now there's a less of an up trade when you challenge the Orpheum. But challenging the Orpheum, when you're not challenging the Orpheum, but now challenging the Orpheum is challenging an Orpheum before was bad because you think that you're doing a good thing by challenging that. But
no, don't ever block Orpheum. Don't block
Orpheum. But we've seen nerfs happen in the past where the card itself is the main victim of how hard it was nerfed. But in other scenarios, and I'll use Magic as an example here, when they banned Field of the Dead being 50% of the meta, all that did was it just opened up for another overpowered card to be the even worse transgressor of a very narrow and oppressive meta. And in this case, a lot of people were saying if Orpheum was gone, it just means that deck, there's going to be no deck that can fly fast enough to get underneath yellow green Volition combo. But that doesn't seem to be the case.
No, I know the new combo. I got the new combo for you because I saw it several times yesterday. Okay, it's Stairway to Hell with putting a rush, usually the one that's the plane and the dragon. I forgot what it's called.
The Iron Belly.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you put that one on there, and then you give it Volition once it's got the double hit, and that one is just like, oh my god, that's so infuriating. It gets to hit you 4 times. Oh my god. Yeah, that's the new crazy combo I saw. Yeah,
that is some nasty stuff, but I don't think that Volition in that, like, people were literally losing their minds and saying it's going to be a Volition meta and it's going to be a Volition city.
It's not. I rarely see it.
And really, I mean, you can also take measures versus it too. Like if they're using their graveyard as a tool, just put Gruul in your deck or whatever his name is, the one that can just exile things from.
Oh yeah, that shuts down Reanimator.
There's so much you can do.
Yeah,
it shuts down Reanimator and then it shuts down Volition too because you're just eating cards away. Because they take a while to get going. So like unless they want to spend a lot of resources or resources in general killing your dude that can answer the graveyard, then like, you're doing something and then you're slowing them down anyway, which is nice.
So we'll see how this one pans out. But I think that the panic that was setting in for people thinking that they were going to be existing in a Volition, environment it's pretty much subsided because
I think it calmed down.
Yeah, it's been a few days and people have in the wake of the tournament seen that okay, Volition might have won, but it didn't sweep. It lost a game in every best of 3 series, and it was 1 point away from losing the finals. It was 1 life point away.
Yeah,
literally 1 life point away.
Here's like if you're upset about, and I know how this sounds because we just keep defending it, but honestly, if you get ever in the future you're upset about a nerf or whatever, a buff or something. The best way to look at if it was a good idea or not is how did the players who were in like champion rank or tournament grinders, how did they react? And as we saw with Masquerade and with most of the people in champion and Mythgard, they didn't really care. Like it was kind of like okay, so that card got changed, and that was kind of the attitude. And it's like if that's the attitude that high up, then you shouldn't really be that upset. Like you shouldn't be that concerned because it means everything's gonna be fine. And that didn't change the game forever, So let's just all take it down a notch, let it settle. We'll find new cards. There's 99 mythic cards, like we just said. There's tons of cards to play around with, so we'll find something new.
So in that case, are there any other cards you feel should get a nerf or a tweak?
I've been saying this one for a while, and I think that I've talked to a lot of people about it. Seal of Exile, drives me absolutely batshit crazy. I think that Seal of Exile should be a gold card. That's my only, and that's not, I guess that's a little bit of a nerf, but I just think it should be a gold card.
I tend to agree with you on that one. I think if Seal of Exile has significant implications to a deck, there's no better feeling and there's no better power move than Seal of Exile on curve against a necromantic. Yeah. That is the absolute most devastating.
I know it's the worst. But everyone always says to me, whenever I say that, they're like, well, most people only run 2. And first of all, how do you know? And second of all, but you can run 3. So that's the thing. Like, sure, most people may run 2, but I could also put a third one in, and that's where it becomes like the person that's running the third exile. Like, I'm just going to concede because I've been exiled 3 times. Forget it.
So this is purely a move from
it's just it's a passion emotion. Yeah. But if that was my other argument too. Like if most people are already running 2 anyway, then why not just make it a gold card?
Well, you don't want to add any more rares to the.
Yeah, like you add a rare and then you take away a budget option for someone to be able to deal with it. Like someone just starting out and they use their rare cards on like parry because parry's really, really good. They're not going to have a lot of resources after that. Like the faction quest, of course, gives you 1 parry. I think that if you were to make Seal of Exile a rare, it would still have to be in the faction quest as a rare, and you still have to keep parry in there, which would be kind of unfair.
Yeah.
But like the way that I look at something like Seal of Exile, where it's a powerful card, you know that your opponent's going to have it at some point in the game, so you can like work to bait that out. or just not play the thing that they want to seal for a really long time, making them lose value, and maybe they burn it instead for late game. Like there's a lot of ways you can play around it in a way.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's super obvious. It's not a card that people are like not going to run unless they're doing like a 3-color deck or something.
When I see orange, I know you have it. Yeah. It's like an auto included orange. So.
Which is a nice little tidbit to actually note here is that isn't it great that you could see what gets burnt from your opponent and not just the color?
Yeah, that's great because think of if it was the other way around. Like imagine if you couldn't see what they burned. Wouldn't that just be way harder? Like that would just be like almost impossible, like to predict.
And I love it because you can like bait people. Like you burn one of your thunderclaps, and it's like, oh, he got rid of his thunderclap. I can go wide, and then you just get
you have another
Magnus through. You get thunderclapped again. Like it's so cool.
I used to do that with Cataclysm. I'd burn one if I had both in hand, so that they think, oh, good, he's not going to do that now, and then the second one comes out next turn.
That is my favorite. I think one of my best moments that I've ever done was, and again, my best moments are all about, it's not about winning a game. It's about winning a moment or winning like a turn. And it was basically my opponent was playing Seasons, and I knew that he was going into Winter, and he had a bunch of garbage on the board. It was red, blue, and he had 2 Fire Eaters. And
I hate those. Oh my God.
I could not touch them. So I had 2 Thunderclaps in hand, and I burnt one. And after I played what I had to play, I had nothing to play. So I pretended that I could not do anything. So I purposely did not play anything. And I knew he was going into Winter. And then I just burnt Thunderclap and passed. And then he said, oops, and BM'd. Flooded the board with 2 another Fire Eater and another Iron Belly Wyvern, and it dumped his hand, and I ate shit for that one turn. I took a bunch of damage, but then I thunderclapped him through Winter and killed all his dudes, and it was the best feeling in the world.
Did you say oops back?
Yeah, I
of course I did, but I enjoyed it. I lit a candle. I poured a glass of wine.
You relished the moment. Yes.
Oh, it's so good.
I love when people get greedy on Winter. That's my favorite thing. I'm always like, please just play everything you have. Just be overconfident in this moment because there is some hurt coming next turn. I love that.
That's why I switched to disc. I'm going to try to switch to disc even if it's a splash. Honoric was he made a list that is basically his orange purple control with Peach, and then he's splashing green just for I think it's something like 2 Wakes and 2 Born Agains. And you just use it for disc value. And I think that I want to take that and just kind of do what I can with different combinations and stuff. I think that purple green's my favorite shell for it just to have anyway, but the splash seems really interesting too. But I hate Winter.
A lot of people were talking about how green was identified by 3 key cards where no matter what deck you were building, whatever shell you were playing, be it if you're playing yellow blue or red orange or whatnot, people would actually play 2 copies of Bald Mountain and 2 copies of Wake the Bones, and that's it. And it's just the splash for that one gem, because Wake the Bones and Bald Mountain are exceptionally powerful. And it's worth the 4 or 5 card slots and the early burn to have that in the late game where it really, really matters. Because it's amazing that these are cards that are splash worthy just to sort of disrupt what's going on in the deck. But it's like a mono blue deck but plays 4 bulwarks because it's great.
Yeah, I had a lot of experience doing that. You saw a lot of my lists where I just do 2 Wakes, 1 Bald, or 2 Balds, 2 Wakes. And the conclusion that I came to, after doing it a lot, is that I usually lost to more powerful enchantments, sometimes Stairway to Heaven or Stairway to Hell and then to Heaven and back. People would just get more value than me sometimes, which was just insane because they would either keep the monster off of Bald Mountain so I could never get value off of it, or it just never lined up for me. The burns were awkward. I wouldn't be able to find Bald Mountain when I needed it to be there for me and such. It was really weird for me. So unless I'm in green nowadays, I try not to just auto force the Bald Mountain anymore. But I think the Born Again and the Wake the Bones might become more popular with disc, like just for the value, so you don't have to play with winter, so you can be more predictable with that stuff.
So I want to get into the faction missions because these are an addition that came out with the latest patch that dropped. I believe it was last Thursday, about a week ago or so. And there was a lot of discussion and I would say criticism. I think it's fair to say criticism and justified criticism to a degree, that it's hard for a new player to come in and feel comfortable and feel like the games that they're playing mean something and matter, because it's sometimes you're just getting smashed and beaten down on your journey to earning coin and whatnot. And as much coin as you might be earning early on, it wasn't like you were not earning. It didn't feel good. So in come the faction missions, and the faction missions essentially are the different missions per color: blue, yellow, red, green, orange, purple. And as you progress through these different missions, you earn, not only do you earn 600 gold per, but you also earn wild cards and actual cards that are pretty good. They're not cards that are just, throwaways. There's some pretty good cards in here. And now here's the statistics of everything that you get. And I want to go into a little bit about what we're getting out of this. But in terms of, let's say if you complete all of the missions, so there are 9 quests per faction and 6 factions. If you complete all of them, you're earning 32,400 gold coins or coins. In terms of wild cards, you're earning 36 common, 30 uncommon, 12 rare, and 6 mythic, spread equally between all the colors. Is that enough, including on top of all the cards that you're getting? Is that the right frequency? Is that the Goldilocks zone for a new player to come in and say, I think I can do this. I think I could free to play this and feel good?
Yeah, it was meant to. I think originally it was meant for new players specifically, right? Because it was meant for them to be able to build up their collection with the faction that they like the most. And then I saw some people get upset about saying that these are too hard. I can't complete it in 24 hours. It's like, well, you're not supposed to go through all of them in 24 hours,
right?
So it's supposed to take you a while. But that's the whole point. But I think they're specifically meant, like, especially at the beginning, for new players to kind of get their hands on their favorite faction and build up that collection. Because I'm going through yellow right now, and everything I keep getting, I'm like, well, I already have all this. But I think it's.
But I mean, it's still dust for older players. One, like for me, it all breaks down to essences, and then it also, I think, for a new player, it's really important because if someone's checking out like a budget version of a deck or whatever color they're interested in, they get to play around with the cards in that color, and they kind of get like nudged at in regards to, what that color is about. Like, red, like, you're supposed to lose life in order to gain something out of it. So they tell you, we'll lose X amount of life during a game because you're going to have to do this, probably playing red. Now gain some life, get that life back. And they kind of teach you that you can gain life and, draw cards. There's
teaching you how to play the faction.
To it.
Yeah.
The cards that you're earning out of this as well they're like I said, they're not throwaways. These are not unplayable cards. I know that in Magic, a lot of the design around cards, a lot of them, people will defend bad cards by saying, oh, it's for limited, it's for this, it's for that. And there is actual draft in Mythgard. And I know that I played a lot of draft in the last couple of days, and I would pick a card and say, this is a draft card. This is a quote unquote arena card. Like, this is a card that would never see play in Constructed because there are better options. But in Arena, when there's no immediate answers to things all the time, this card can run the table. Cards like Snuggles and all that other stuff.
Snuggles.
Take Snuggles, man. Like, you'll play it. It's the gem restrictions are not that bad.
It's huge, man. Snuggles is gigantic.
It's a 9/9. Like, Hyperborean in Arena is just, in draft, is just like,
you ever done a reanimator with? You ever done Reanimator with red? You throw Snuggles in there? That's some surprising moments for your opponent.
You're disgusting. You disgust me. So I want to go through, at least, like, we can go through all the cards in each one of these, but I mean, I'm just going to go through the rares that you earn at the end of the rainbow, let's say, in all of these. Now, in blue, what I'm going to do is I'm going to name the card, and I want you to rate the card on 10 in terms of how good this card is to that particular color. So I'll name the card and you tell me. We'll start with Waifu and then we'll go to Mark. So in blue, the rare you earn is Thunderclap. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good is that card?
I'd say it's probably like a 7 or an 8, depending on your budget. Because a lot of blue lists don't run Thunderclap; they'll run Magnus instead. But I think it's a really good card still. Like you can put it into most blue decks, but it doesn't fit in all of them. And it's really good to counter aggro, or like if you're going aggro versus aggro, like it's just a nice card to have. So I'd say it's a solid like 7.5.
Mark?
Yeah, I'd probably put it around there. I'd probably even give it an 8 just because I think it actually works well in most blue decks because it's an easy removal for there's so many creatures that are a 2, have 2 health, and this one just nice board wise, especially when you get that greedy player on turn going into winter. Thunderclap is your best friend
for 3.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm gonna go along with the same as you guys. I'm gonna give it an 8.5 in terms of what this card can do.
That's a little high.
I think that in terms of if you're going on a hierarchy of what rare cards have impact, I think that Thunderclap is a card that will fit into almost every single blue deck that you. There's no bad placement. This deck fits into everything that you're playing with blue, unless you're going for something very, very, very low end, like bottom and nothing greater than 3 kind of thing, or nothing too slow. That I still feel like Thunderclap fits into everything. So I think that giving it I'll give it an 8.5. I'll get a little bit aggressive on it, but 8.5. All right, into the yellow Olama Ring. What would you rate that one?
If it's me, I would probably say probably like a 6 or a 7. I'm not really too impressed by it. A lot of the times when I go to play it, like even in like the snake decks and everything else where you're going super wide. Now that the format's kind of slowed down a bit, it might be a little bit better, because if before it would just die to horrors, like before you got a board state going, before you could give your minions +1/+1, there wouldn't be any minions. So maybe it's a little bit better now, but it's probably like a 6 for me.
Mark?
So yellow is my favorite faction, so I do like Olama Ring a lot, or as you call it, Obama Ring. But I would kind of agree that it's a slower card because it's a 4 for 2 gems, which is a bit expensive, especially if you're not playing mono yellow. So it'll take you a while to be able to use it. So I would probably give that card I'd probably give it maybe a 5.5 or a 6, just because it's a powerful card when you get to use it, but it's such a late game card, in my opinion, that you're always going to end up burning it early on.
I'm going to give this card a 6.5, and I'm not trying to one up you guys every single time.
What is the price is right? 101 penny.
Yeah. The reason why I like this card, and not just because I've played it so often, is because when you're playing yellow, at least when I play yellow, usually you're playing towards a longer game and outvaluing and survivability of minions, and getting that Olama Ring with the value of things like if you're playing on curve, you can get Yahui out, you can get Miso Libre out, or a Snake out, and then if you're safe enough, you can Olama Ring and really sort of go far. It's not a card that you want to top deck when nothing's going your way, unless you have a full board. But at the same time, and it's a pretty slow card, but at the same time, I think that when it comes to playing those control matchups or those mid-range versus control, this is a card that can kind of put you over the top and kind of push a little bit harder than your opponent. It's still not a card that you want to build around, or that's going to solve many problems for you. So I think a 6.5 is still a fair assessment. But what about Extract Life?
Wait, hold on. I was going to say one more thing. I was going to say one more thing about Olama Ring.
Yeah.
So, go for it. Go for it.
All right,
you want to
go?
Okay. I was just going to say that it's really great in Fires of Creation because, especially when you get to stack it. So that is for me, if I'm doing Fires of Creation, I want yellow. Olama Ring is obviously 100% in, and that's a great card for that deck.
What I was going to say is, in this spot instead of Ring, I'd rather see Misanthropia 100%.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
And that,
for sure.
That would be that'd be a 9.
I think that's one of yellow's probably strongest rares, right? That's a super awesome clear.
And I think giving away 1 wouldn't be too bad. You know what I mean? It's just a more applicable card. Most yellow decks run 1 to 2 of those.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I think you get it in. Do you not get it in the story mode?
I have no idea. I haven't done that in a year.
They already so they already give it away as part of one of the standard missions.
Oh, maybe okay. So that's a standard card.
But you're absolutely correct. When it comes to yellow rare cards, Misanthropia, if I were to rate that, to me, Misanthropia would have been like a 9 or a 10 on 10.
That's an auto include in mono yellow for sure. That's a mono yellow auto include. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to go on to Extract Life. And Waifu, what would you rate this card in terms of
Extract Life? I would say it's at least like an 8 or a 9. It's a really good card. It's removal that can tempo out, and it's good in aggro sometimes, and it's also good in control. It's definitely good in mono red for sure because you don't have to struggle with the 3 gems, and it kind of pays for the Icarfests and stuff. So I would say that it's just really nice removal that comes with a bonus. So I like it.
It's an expensive one, right? Three gems. So if you're doing mono red, definitely you want to put that in there. I think if you run 2 of those, that's a little hefty. So if you throw 1 in, that's a nice addition. I actually ran this card in a Fires deck, and I also ran it in a deck that I was trying to use heavy spell removal. But the value, if you get to use it on a very large unit, the value on it for gaining the life is really good. So I would probably, are we still giving it scores, right? I'd probably give this card, I'd put it in the 7 range. I'm going to put this one in the 7 range just because of it's a little expensive.
Yeah, I'll give it a 7.5. I think that this card it'll fit into rush decks because of the fact that it's 3 red gems, but at the same time you could use it on any mana that you have, and the added bonus of removal and life gain is enough of a swing to keep you in and remove what you need. So you can get creative with how this card is played. It's a control card as well as fits into a mid-range or aggro for variant 2. I just think that there are better removal spells than this. Obviously, I think that Crimson Pact is the way that you want to go, but you get that in the uncommon slot on your path there. If this was Magmator, but you get Magmator, I believe, from the story mode again. So I would probably have preferred to see this card be something like Ringmaster or Wings of Abaddon. Yeah, I think that those would have been better options for this. But I still think that Extract Life is good. I just feel like it doesn't necessarily fit into what Red was going for there. Because, I mean, if you're looking at it, the path there to get to Extract Life has Trapezist, Iron Belly, and Panic Raiders. So you get all these rush, and then suddenly you have a control card at the end. So it's like, what? Okay, sure. But that's what you get on that. Any final sort of remarks on Extract Life?
I think that's pretty much, I'm good with that. I've used it in a few control decks here and there, like red-green or something, but I do think it's more of a control card, not really an aggro card, and they do build up the aggro there in the, like you said, in the progression for the quest, so it does seem kind of out of place.
All right, so how about we go to green? Green's gold or rare prize is Bald Mountain. So what would you give that on 10, Waifu?
I'd probably say like an 8.5. Like it's very, very good, and it goes in any type of like. I would say if you're mid-range to control, it's good. It's probably not the best in aggro, unless you're doing some type of combo aggro with like the recursionist, like the blue-green person, where you get spells back. But even then, it doesn't really make a lot of sense because you give all of your spells Imperial, so it doesn't really fit in there. So I'd say like if you're running control and you're going in for the long game, sometimes you can even splash for this, like people have been doing since like 1997. So it's pretty good.
I don't have a good opinion on this one because I haven't used this card very much. Green is probably one of outside of Animator, Reanimator. Green's probably the least that I've played. So I really only stick to Reanimator situations with Green. So I don't really have like a really great opinion on Bald Mountain, but if you're playing like a rainbow deck, this would be a nice one to throw in there. If you're doing heavy elements, this seems like a good card. But I hesitate to give it a score because I feel like I can't do it justice because I don't play it enough myself.
All right. Well, abstaining from voting is a noble cause as well. I'll give this one an 8 on 10. I think it has exceptional use for what Green likes to do, which is play more mid to late game, as well as bringing stuff back. I mean, there's a lot of powerful cards that Green plays, and a lot of them are spells, and being able to bring them back for instance, like Wake the Bones, and then use your Wake the Bones to bring back a short stag, which then could bring back God knows what else. But there's really good implications for getting more mileage off of these big cards. Bald Mountain is really, really good. I think an 8 or an 8.5 for that bad boy is good. So far, Bald Mountain is probably the best one so far out of them. But this means that we're going to orange. And I know that you were already talking about how great Parry at the Gates is for orange. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, Waifu, Parry at the Gates is the gold prize for orange.
Yeah, I would say it's a 10. Going back to Bald Mountain for just a second, though. I think
sure.
that Murmurs should get Inferial, just period. Like, Murmurs should just have Inferial. You shouldn't be able to do that more than once per game, even as an advocate for green players. I love green. You shouldn't be able to murmur twice. It's ignorant. It's insane.
That is, what's funny is that a lot of the discussion about some of these cards that I've had with people has been like, I'll get messages randomly like, how does this card not give ephemeral? Like, or how does this card not, or how come when something comes back to the board via graveyard effect like Junkyard Valhalla or a Necromantic, how come the Awaken effect takes place? Like, why is that? There's all kinds of these little pieces that we kind of overlook, but I agree with you. I think that Traitorous Murmur should likely be an ephemeral card just from the get-go.
Yep. But yeah, Parry is just insane. I think I don't know if it needs to get like nerfed per se. I think that it's fine the way that it is. A lot of people say that they would run Parry at the Gates even if it didn't have a creature attached to it, which is pretty good. So if that gives you any inclination, it's definitely the go-to like craft, I think, for orange. As soon as you go into orange, you definitely craft Parry. That's your first priority, just because it gives you so much card advantage. When I'm not playing like orange in my control list, I usually miss the draw power from Parry. The close second is like Raid the Tombs for green, because it's so easy to cast and you just kind of draw 2 cards for 2 mana, and that's good. It's like Pot of Greed. It's nice, but Parry is just a blocker. You can recur through Wake the Bones. Like, there's a lot of recursion for her. She's just really solid. I like it a lot.
Marky?
I mean, this is a auto include in orange, right? I mean, I think almost every list that had orange at Masquerade played this card. I mean, I would probably put it at I don't want to give anything a perfect score, so I'll say it's a 9. It's just because I don't want to give anything a perfect score, but just because it's an auto include and everything, it's kind of cheap. It's only 4 for 2, but the ability that it has is like crazy. You're drawing a card, then you're getting to pick a card to draw. It's just I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, right? I mean, or orange just has great card draw with this in it.
All right, I'm going to totally be that guy and give it a 9.5 to just wedge between these two. Again,
just right in between.
just to sort of slide in between there. Parry at the Gates is a phenomenal card because I don't think that there's really ever a bad time to play it. If it's late game, it's a godsend to sort of refill your hand. The fact that you get to draw, then Divination for 2, and then, or is it 2 or 3? I think it's 2. And then pick the next card that you want. It's exceptionally good. Not to mention, if you are playing it on curve, it might seem slow, but typically if you are worried about falling behind on turn 4, it's probably because you're playing against a rush deck, and a 2/2 blocker is not the worst thing in the world, even at that stage. So I think that it's a really, really good card. And before we close the books on Parry at the Gates, any last thoughts on it?
I think you could probably nerf it and just make it like draw 2 cards without the divination, but you kind of lose the flavor that orange has at that point. Like, I don't know, it's hard to say because they have some other like unique cards that sort of divinate, like the Ifrit and such, and Ifrit, yeah. So it's sort of like thematic. So I can kind of see not wanting to take that away, but it's pretty much it.
All right, shall we wrap it up and go to purple with the Pentacle of Flavors?
Sure. So this card, like, it's really hard to play in a lot of lists. Like, you really have to have the right creatures for it, like something that can tank, something that has armor, something where you can kind of get a lot of staying power out of it. Or like if you have Bald Mountain in your deck, you can recur it, which is nice. But it's sort of it struggles to find a home. Like none of the top 8 lists that I saw had it. For example, it's just really hard to find a home for. Like I've tried to experiment with it here and there, but a lot of the times when I'd post a list to like either not you, I don't think maybe I didn't post it to you, Flake, but like to Honoric or some other people like Toonstar and whatnot. Like they're just like, I don't know if this card really fits, and that card was usually Pentacle, so I would probably give it like a 5.
That's a fair one. Okay, Mark. Pentacle?
Let's talk about what it does, right? It gives a minion Armor 1, Focus 2, Regen 3, Slayer 4, and Blast 5. There's a lot going on with this card.
It's a pentacle of flavors.
It's a pentacle of flavors. But yeah, it's a tough card to work into a deck, like Waifu said, because it's I don't really see this card played very often. It's I think purple is such a nice support faction as it is, so this just adds to it. But what's the cost on this one? It's a 4 for 2 gems, which isn't too bad. I'm gonna go ahead and place this one at a 6 because I think the ability is really crazy, but I also think that it's like you said, very specific with how you could use this into a deck.
So I'm going to give this a 4 if it was constructed, like an 8 if this was if it was just draft, because this is this is a draft killer. This is a card that absolutely devastates draft. But in terms of constructed, like you said, it's a really difficult card to fit in and have effectively, because the situations where this card really can shine, it depends on what the board state is. And then whenever a card is dependent on a specific board state, it loses its reliability and thus loses its appeal for the strength of a deck. It's a great card to fit in when you can have it, because this card can win you games alone if it cannot be met. But in certain cards where certain games you're already behind, this card might be able to get you out of a jam, but it at what cost? Probably at a bad trade that you have to make where you're not really getting the value of it. For 4 mana and what it does, it's great. It sounds cool, but I don't think that it's reliable enough on its own, where it can fit into any game state that it's that great. So I'll give it a 4 on 10, making it, in my opinion, the weakest link out of all 6 rare prizes from the faction missions. Any last thoughts on the Pentacle of Flavors?
I'm all set with that.
All right. Well, we had a pentacle of opinions on it too.
We did.
All right. So we are going to be wrapping up real quick here, but I do want to do one quick thing. And this is going to be a lightning round, and we're just going to 5 words or less. I want to go through each color, and if there was going to be a mythic prize at the end of each faction, which mythic would you choose to award after the rare? So we're going to go with blue and Waifu.
Magnus.
Mark?
I would agree, Magnus.
I would say Braggy for that one.
Okay, Braggy's also good.
All right, in yellow, what would you give?
Probably Sapo.
We're gonna be. We might be in agreement this whole time, because I was also gonna say Sapo.
I was gonna say Zalea, but I was between Zalea and Sapo, but I think Sapo is the right answer on that one. It's kind of like insta lock. All right, in red,
Stairway to Hell. Stairway to Hell, is it? Yeah.
That's a good one. Let me think of a different one then.
It could be the same. The exercise here is to show that there are just some cards that are just synonymous with the color, like Instacrafts almost.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of another. I guess I'll say Stairway to Hell, because I can't think of another one off the top of my head that's a really big one that I see all the time. So let's just go with. I'll go with Stairway to Hell as well.
All right, I like that one. I was going to go with 7 Ring Ritual on this one.
That's a good one too.
That's good.
All right,
spicy one.
In green,
Stag, the Chad Stag.
Chad Stag.
I'm trying to think of a
Mark, you're allowed.
I think Stag again is a great one, but I was trying to think of another one that Reanimator uses besides Stag. Oh, what's the other one? That's the 10-10.
Eco Terso?
Is that the 10-10 guy?
Yeah, that's the one who makes someone immobile.
Yeah, that's the one I'll say then. That's
Icky
the one,
Thump. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So Eco Terso says, Mark, I will also go with Short Stag. I think Short Stag is banana cakes. All right. We'll start with Mark this time.
Okay.
Orange.
I wish I could say Seal of Exile, but that's not a mythic. Oh boy, because I never played. Oh, I'm gonna say my other card that I hate the most, only because it's a great board clear. I'm gonna go with Armageddon Angel.
Yeah, Armageddon is really good. That would be my go-to. If I had to pick a different one, I would say to Heaven and Back.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh,
So this
that's
is the
good
first
too,
time
yeah.
that we're all on different pages. I'm going to say Scion of Pride. I think that.
Ooh, yeah,
that's
that one's a good one too. Yeah.
All right, now the hard one. Purple.
Purple. Geez, I'd have to look over one of my lists.
It's weird because this is a color that a lot of people just the mythics in it are purple.
I think the most universal one that I see a lot, and this is just for control players, I would say Reincarnation is really nice.
I'm going to go off the beaten path, and I'm going to go ahead and say Fastlane.
Oh, okay.
Just because I don't see it enough, and I want to see more of it.
I'm going to say Perfect Grade because it's one of the few that I can name off the top of my head and can actually recite the stats for it. So I'm going to say Perfect Grade. It also fits with it's a big like mech kind of like Power Rangers Zordon kind of Zord thing. So
it's used in Reanimator too, which is really nice. So.
Yeah, big boy decks. I like that. Maybe I'll play that tomorrow just to piss people off. But
there you go.
And it's Halloween tomorrow, I guess, at the time of us recording this. So.
Might as well play a horrible deck for Halloween.
Dear Lord. Okay. All right. Well, that wraps it for the topics. We are going to go to the mailbag before we end this. But before we do, we're just going to hear some words from our sponsors at Inked Gaming.
This episode of the Boneyard Podcast is brought to you by Inked Gaming. If you're looking for a one-stop shop for gaming accessories, we suggest heading over to inkedgaming.com. Inked Gaming features both custom and store art playmats, dice bags, PC gaming mouse pads, and tons more. Recently, Inked has added a stitched option on playmats and mouse pads to provide even more durability and uniqueness to your game. Use the code TRS12 at checkout and get 12% off your order today. Play your games with your style at inkedgaming.com.
All right, so we are going to go to the community mailbag. This is where you, the lovely listeners, via Reddit or Twitter or Discord or Twitch, send us your questions or suggestions that for us, myself, Mark, and I, or our guest, in this case, WaifuGate, to answer your questions. And the first question is from Bensi on Reddit, and this one is for WaifuGate. Now, I guess we could briefly go through this, but why don't you just, he says, can you explain your username, please?
My username? Yeah, I got you. So it's basically just I like anime, and my favorite anime is Steins Gate. So it just sort of clicked for me one day. Like it was a little catchy, and there's some theme there. So I just kind of went with that because it felt right. From my old name, Swiss Mocha, which I got from a just the bathroom mat that we had that had a bunch of different drinks on it for warm drinks and such.
That's an awesome answer.
Oh my God. Yeah, I got my name from a toilet mat. It's like, yeah, it's all good. I mean, I've heard worse stories, but I like how you said it just felt good. That's kind of how it sticks sometimes. All right. Next one is via Twitter, and this is from Nerast, and he says, why do you think Mythgard, like Hearthstone, settled on 7 maximum minions? Anybody want to tackle this one first? Give some thoughts or that?
Hold on. I got to reread the question.
All right. So basically the question is, Mythgard, like Hearthstone, maxes out the board at 7 creatures max. So you can't have more than that. And I mean, I'll give my quick thoughts on this at first. I think that given the fact that lanes are important here, you want to
mean
make
the
sure
lanes. I was like, wait, there's 7. You can put more than that in your deck. You mean the lanes?
No. On the board.
Okay.
So there's a maximum of 7 that can hit the board. I apologize. Yeah, sorry, that was me, I guess, not reading it the whole thing. But on the board itself, you can only have 7 per side at a time. It's the same like Hearthstone. So that's what Nerast is asking. Why do you think that there's a specific 7 max minions?
Because that's how many they could fit on the screen without the lanes being unbearable.
Just make it. I mean, if you don't go 360p or something.
In 2 verse 2, it's 14. So, I mean, how much more do you want?
That's true. So you in that case, but I mean, in my opinion, I think it's just because you want to encourage interaction, at least in this game. In Hearthstone, you don't need you can have a board as big as you want in terms of actually lanes mattering. In Hearthstone, they don't.
You mean in Magic? In Magic, you can have as many as you want. That's what you mean, right?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. In Hearthstone, it limits as well. In Magic, you can have whatever.
In Hearthstone, there's a limit because of the fact that there's a weird interactions that create creatures, and there's like these weird. I think that in Hearthstone, the limit exists because things that eat other things, that spawn other things, there's crazy combos that would just get out of control. You'd have a board that would be 100 dudes long. In Mythgard, I think that there's 7 because it encourages interaction between the lanes, and because lanes block other lanes, it becomes a matter of having to move and place and you don't want to flood, because if you're putting something in lane 1 and then something in lane 25, then you're never going to have that thing in lane 1 ever interact with lane 25. So I think that's why in those specific games they're like that.
Yeah, and I think with other games, like they did a really good job. Like I think Elder Scrolls Legends, I'm not sure what it's called now, but they used to have like 2 lanes where you could like kind of play different things. So this is sort of a nice mix up with that. And I think that they settled on that amount because it's like enough interaction with each other to where you have interactions with like 1 and 3 or 3 and 5. Like there's just enough to make it interesting and to have choices basically when you go to place your minions or your enchantments or whatever else. There's a lot of intricate decisions that goes along with that because of the number of lanes.
Makes sense. From Burn Melt on Reddit, you have to make a monocolored deck. What color do you choose and why?
Yellow. Because it's
right
my
out
favorite.
Of the gate.
Because it's my favorite.
Again,
no, there's other reasons.
From Mark.
No, I have other reasons. Actually, I'll expand on that. So yellow's my favorite for this reason. So when I first started playing the game, just like I did with Magic, I didn't really have a collection. So I wanted to. Okay, well, the easiest way to learn how to play is just play a mono deck. This way, I don't have to worry about color costs and all the crazy stuff. So I picked a color I liked, and I just went to town with that. In Magic, it was red, and in Mythgard, I wanted it to be red, but it didn't turn out that way because I didn't really like all kind of the way red was going because I wanted to do vampires. It wasn't really that great at the time, so I kind of latched onto yellow. I liked the theming of yellow, and I liked the way that yellow was playing with enchantments and things like that. So mono yellow, especially if you get if it's mythic heavy, is a really powerful deck. So if you get a lot of those mythics in yellow have synergy together, which is really awesome. And also Sapo is just a beast. So why would you not want to play a deck that had Sapo in it? So there you go. That's why yellow.
I'd go with purple just because it has answers to everything. You have a lot of life gain with Sword Saint. You have Spirited Away to take care of any minion. And then you've got really good, efficient late game creatures like Lantern Colossus, Tarragon, just things that have overrun. And you can put the Lifeblade on those to get even more life gain through. And you've got really efficient creatures like Racers that can rush in and trade. You've got Spear Dudes that can cycle late game, or they can trade. You can use the Spear to do whatever you want with. You've got Baku to like suppress things, which like is another answer that you don't have to use for Spirit Away. That like there's so many good cards in purple that if I had to pick one color, it would definitely just be purple.
That would be the one I think that wouldn't have been said because that's one you rarely see a mono purple deck. So that would be one that I would think that would be the least option. But that all sounds compelling. So maybe I'm wrong.
I think its shortcomings probably its draw balance isn't very good. So yeah. There's that.
Oh, but you're definitely hitting the nail on the head there. I didn't think about a lot of what you discussed. I thought purple does have a I answers, which is weird that it doesn't see as much prominence.
It's just slow at the beginning, right?
Right.
So,
yeah.
I was leaning towards so many different colors here, like green or red or whatnot. But I think the color that really encourages minion interaction, I feel, is blue. Blue has a lot of big boys that there's no
Valkyries, baby.
Well, there's Valkyries, sure. I mean, that's a very good. I mean, it's a very viable archetype right there if you play just Valkyries. But
that's mid-range.
But from a perspective of actually, there's no spot removal in blue, and that's its biggest weakness is the fact that there's no spell that says F off kind of thing. But there are big boys with a lot of punch.
No, actually, that's not true. What's the spike? Ice spike is kind of a spot removal.
Well, I mean, spot removal. It deals 2 damage. It's not an insta kill. It's not like
you're right. You're right.
3 damage in winter.
Yeah, 3 damage in winter,
Yeah,
and it pierces through that armor, mofo. So, the cool part about blue is that you're solving all your problems via creative trades and enchantments and such. And I like that aspect of the game when you're solving puzzles based on that kind of interaction. And yeah, I mean, it's cool to have removal spells, and I'm not saying this from a perspective like when he said, and when the part of the question says "and why," I think for me the "and why" is because of the fact that there's a lot of trading that goes on and creatures smashing into each other, and the overrun of things like Blackened Jotun and cards like Hyperborean and Living Mountain, etc. So I'm not saying I'm going to win a lot of games with that strategy, but I think that it's always fun to make happen. So that would be my choice. And that does it for the mailbag. So thanks to everybody who submitted to it, and to Waifu for the awesome answers that he provided, and to Mark for the instant emotional response of yellow.
Hey, I give a good reason after that.
No, you did. You absolutely did. You absolutely did. So that does it for this episode 9 of the Boneyard. I want to say thank you again to WaifuGate for joining us in this discussion, my dude. I hope you had a good time.
I did. Thanks for the invite.
It's my pleasure. And if anybody wants to catch you, where can they find you and see the cool things that you do?
I'd say mainly on Twitch right now. I'm still working on YouTube, but just Twitch, WaifuGate. Pretty easy to find me. So.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much again for being on the show. As always, my man, it is a pleasure to just discuss with you, and it's cool to have you on. So we will definitely see you down the road in one capacity or another, my man. So thanks again. And to you, Mark, out of a pentacle of flavors, out of all 5 flavors, what would you rate this show today?
We'll give it 5 pentacles out of 5.
That's like 5 times 5 over there.
Yeah, it's 5 times
so
5.
So many flavors.
So many flavors.
Mark, thanks again for producing the show and making everything happen. You are the man. And do you want to give a little love to our sponsors?
We're gonna thank Inked Gaming, Team Rankstar, 983 Media, and OP Seat, and all you beautiful viewers for supporting the show.
Oh, they're so beautiful. They're so damn beautiful. And you can catch myself on Twitter at WatchFlake, or on Twitch, twitch.tv/WatchFlake. Marktheus at Marktheus on Twitter, and twitch.tv/Marktheus. And we invite you, as always, to be kind to one another. And thank you for listening, as always, because if it's not for you, we would be talking to ourselves. So cheers and adios.